He's gone! After his lengthy period of internal monologuing, Justin Trudeau has decided to resign. So, what does this mean for Canada, for the gun ban, and, well, for an election? I'll go over what this means for the gun ban after I go over what this means for an election, because that's the longer discussion. Trudeau has prorogued Parliament until March 24th. What that means is that Parliament will not be sitting until March 24th. If we take a look at the House sitting calendar, they were supposed to resume their parliamentary sitting at the end of January. Because Trudeau prorogued until March 24th, that means all of the sitting days before then are wiped out. So 5 weeks of sitting days are no longer happening. There is nothing the Parliament can do. You'll notice the first day back, officially, is March 31st, after the proroguing. Now, during this prorogement period, Trudeau will stay on as Prime Minister and stay on as leader of the Liberal Party, but they will be holding a leadership election. And this election, according to his words, will be a national election, so people will be able to vote. But it will be concluded by March 24th, and whoever is the leader, whoever wins that, will become the Prime Minister and will resume parliamentary dealings by March 31st. Now, in terms of an election, what it means is that the House cannot vote no confidence until March 31st. And the reason why March 31st is the day that Parliament is returning, or has to return, is because of the budget. Now, I might be wrong on this, but I believe Brian Mulroney, at some point in his tenure as Prime Minister, decided to prorogue Parliament through a budget for some political reason. I don't know exactly what it was, but I believe that's what happened at some point during his tenure. And people didn't like that, so a law was passed that you may not prorogue through a parliamentary budget. If you do decide to prorogue, you have to stop the prorogation just before the budget to allow Parliament to vote on the budget. And that happens to be by March 31st. A budget has to be voted on by the end of March, and that is why he prorogued until the 24th. I'm sure if he could, he would have prorogued until probably July, but there was no chance of him being able to do that. So what that means for an election is that as soon as the House returns, they have an immediate non-confidence vote in front of them in the form of a budget. And there will be plenty more non-confidence votes after that. And so, with the non-confidence vote happening by March 31st, if the non-confidence vote fails, as in the NDP keeps supporting them, well then, we won't get an election very likely until October. Because at that point, they're so deep into it, they're not going to change their minds. But if it succeeds, meaning the NDP votes against them, and we do get an election, we will not actually be heading to the polling places until May. Why is that? Because the electoral calendar, as I have pointed out before, has to be 37 days in length minimum and no more than 51 days. You can do the math in your head, but essentially that means 31 days after this is May, right? It can't be any other time. The other thing you have to consider is that it also has to be on a Monday. So we're looking at Monday the 5th, Monday the 12th, Monday the 19th, and Monday the 26th of May. Those are our election days that will very likely happen for an election. And now we move on to the gun stuff. Now, my YouTube channel is not a news channel, it's not a politics channel, it's a firearms channel. But firearms are naturally intertwined with politics, and thus, I must talk about all these politics. So with regards to the firearms ban, which is the part that I'm sure most of you are here for, what does it mean? Well, it actually means quite a lot. Number one is that any legislation that was planned for the new year is impossible to pass now. Because let's just say, for example, the NDP ends up supporting the government and we don't get an election until October. That's great. But when you look at the sitting calendar, September is, even though it has sitting days, wouldn't actually have any sitting days because the election period would be going on starting in September. So that doesn't matter. There's nothing that can happen in the fall for Parliament to do. When Parliament returns, March 31st is essentially budget day, so that doesn't matter either. So we're looking at April, May, and June. That is not enough time to pass any legislation. It's simply not enough. It would be a crazy time frame to pass sweeping new changes. Now, yes, they can fast track it, but here's the catch. It still has to go through committees. It still has to go through the Senate. So, while yes, they can try and fast track it through the House, it's not enough. They were able to fast track at some point Bill C-21, but that was after months of normal proceedings on the bill, and the bill still ended up passing like well over a year later. Firearm bills typically take 18 months on average to pass, and that includes the break times, the waiting times, and the sitting times. That includes everything. And that's simply because the parliamentary process for large bills is complex. You need to have the meetings, like the SECU meetings. The Senate will also often like to do their own investigations, right? And the Senate very much did with C-21. So it's basically impossible. Nothing is going to happen with any legislation, which is good, which means anything that is done with gun bans will happen via executive action, and that can be undone just as easily. This is a part that a lot of people don't want to hear because it's shit, but yes, the Liberals can still ban things and can still change regulations via order in councils and via FRTs. Now the question is, will they? That's honestly a bit of a difficult one, because gun bans, while they are bullshit to us and we see through their lies, the whole point of gun bans is not public safety. In Canada, they're not. They haven't been for decades. The point is politics. It's to get votes. Now, why would someone who is leaving as a leader and as prime minister want to ban more guns in order to take that away from his successor, who might want to use that same tool in order to claim an early victory? Now, we all know that gun bans can play well in Canada, but they're past the point of playing well as they did. So this might not even be something that the successor wants to do. So I brought up this point in one of my previous politics videos. Let's say the successor is Chrystia Freeland. What has Freeland's big push been since she resigned, or the day that she resigned, her letter, and everything after? Her whole thing has been that the government spending is irresponsible. And she pointed to the gimmicks like the tax holiday, like the $250 checks. But quite honestly, the gun ban also falls into those gimmicks, because you're adding money to a budget that will not solve any crime, that will not do anything other than appease your special lobbyist friends. And so why would someone who is elected on budget-minded, because it doesn't matter whether it's Freeland or anyone else, the primary things they're going to be more budget conscious. That's the whole point of Trudeau stepping down. And that's what caused all of this to step down, or caused all of this to happen in order for him to step down. So why would the person coming in throw caution to the wind and spend even more? It doesn't make sense. So yes, Trudeau could ban more guns while he is still leader, and the new leader could ban more guns via order in council. That's 100% possible, and I'm not going to say it's impossible, because nothing ever is. All it simply means is that it's less likely now. Now, there were supposed to be some roundtable meetings to discuss the banning of further firearms, things like the SKS, the Henry Homesteader, and all that. But I would be very surprised if that actually went through at this point, because it should be up to the new leader as to whether or not they want to go through with it. We're essentially in a lame duck session, right? For 3 full months, the government priorities are to keep it running, not to introduce new measures. By his own words, he stepped down because of internal party pressure, not because of how much people hate him, not because of his polling numbers. He stepped down because of internal pressure. So it doesn't make sense for him to do any big marquee moves while someone else is about to be elected. It just doesn't make sense. Nothing makes sense there. And so in my opinion, I don't think there's going to be any new ordering councils. Yes, there can be. No, I don't think there will be. I think there are too many moving parts, too many reasons against it. However, if there are going to be any further gun bans, I fully expect it to happen via FRT. So I made a community post about this whole FRT ban situation that could happen. And I linked to Runkle's video, and I recommend you go watch it because it does a good job of describing it. Now, essentially, what they redid, or what they removed via regulation, is a protection that was put in place by the Harper government. Now, if you remember, there was a whole, scandal-ish around the CZ-858 and the Swiss Arms in 2014 with the RCMP reclassifying some as prohibited after the fact that they had been sold. There was actually a similar thing recently with the Tavors, where they were restricted, and then the RCMP randomly reclassified them as prohibited, and then everyone just got fucked. It happens occasionally. The rules around it were basically that you have a year to do it, and you have records of all of the classification stuff. And essentially what this means is that if the RCMP wanted to, and this would be entirely of their own volition, although if with a little bit of nudging from the Liberals, they could do it more easily, they could ban a whole bunch of new guns for reconsideration. Now, I'm not going to name any guns myself, but I'm going to give you an idea. In the bans that happened in December, the ones where almost all of the semi-autos got banned, there was an interesting line that the SCAR rifles, the FN SCAR rifles, were banned, but they had already been banned. That was nothing new. The reason they were re-banned was because they thought the GSG 15 and all of the similar family of rifles, like the ISSC, MK, whatever, they thought that was a SCAR variant, and so they rebanned the SCAR in order to capture that as a SCAR variant, to name it as a SCAR variant. So that was the reason they did it. You can think of it kind of the same way, in that there are potentially some rifles in Canada that could be banned via FRT because of what they potentially look like. I did get this comment, and no, it will very almost certainly not be be banning handguns, because if we're using that example of the SCAR, there's a Glock is still a Glock. It didn't change overnight into something else. It still has an FRT of restricted. It's just that you can't change or move restricted handgun restricted transfers. It's just that the transfers are frozen. The actual classification of the handguns hasn't changed. So no, it's not going to ban handguns. And so that's it. Trudeau is gone, and we won't be getting an election until May at the earliest. Yeah, this fucking sucks. We absolutely would have had an election in March if Trudeau had not done this, but the pressure was too much. This became inevitable. When you lose the Quebec caucus, it's done. The Ontario caucus might be the canary in the coal mine. The Quebec caucus leaving you is the collapse of the entire coal mine. So it's only a matter of time until he was out, and he's gone now. Well, not now. He'll be gone on March 24th. I wish he had stayed on as leader, because I would have loved to see him give a defeated speech after losing one of the biggest majorities ever, but alas, we will not be getting that. We'll likely be getting an empty and hollow speech of defeat from Freeland or Carney. But until then, we are stuck waiting. So from here on out, there might be a couple more politics videos I do. Number 1 will be going over all of the official Liberal candidates' views on firearms and the gun bans. Now, I will preface this by saying there is no Liberal leader that will come in that will be pro-gun. That's a complete oxymoron in Canada. They will be anti-gun. The question is, how much anti-gun will they be? And we'll have to wait and find out. But I'm not going to do that video until all of the candidates are officially in. Now, I will also make a video going over who the leader that was chosen is. But again, that won't be happening until March. And I'll be making an election video. And I'll also be making a video about the Conservative parties, what they could do, what they might not do. I think I'm going to wait for the election to be closer before I release a video like that, because right now it doesn't really matter, because nothing's going to be happening for literally 3 full months, really almost 4 months in terms of an election. So I'm going to keep that further down the road. But aside from election videos and politics videos, I do have a few reviews coming. I'll have an optic review coming out in the next 2 or 3 weeks. I'll have a video going over what Canada will be like if these gun bans are not gone away, and a few other goodies that you'll just have to wait for. So, thank you very much for watching, and have a good day.